car bus.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, okay.
From the Bath. My name is Edmund, and Richard is our driver. I'd rather have my job than his, coping with the Bath traffic. Nobody else waiting at the station, so that's good. So a lot of people go and walk there. Our big new shopping development on the right-hand side here. Why build at a time of recession? Well, of course, it was all planned and going on well before that started. The aim of this now is to take you around Bath, show you some of the sights. We will drop you at the Roman baths and see you into the baths. We are not allowed to guide you into the baths. You have your own audio tour to go around there, and from then on you've got a fair amount of free time, and then back to the station. We suggest for about 4:35. Your train goes at 4:50. On the left, the Avon, nice and gently, Richard. The Avon does a great big horseshoe bend here, so that we're surrounded in the hills on the outside, and thankfully the flood levels haven't come up very much at the moment. On the left-hand side, Faro Happold, people who make architects' work. So they were involved in doing the Olympic Stadium. And ladies on the left, that brick building, I think that's probably the only brick building you're going to see as we go around now. That was a stay factory. Yes, you know about stays. Gentlemen, in case you don't know about stays, you breathe in as far as your waist can possibly go, and you keep it at that tight for the rest of the tour. That's what a stay used to do for the ladies' waists. It was, of course, the stay of the corset that kept you all nice and slim. I think it must have been very painful at many times as well, but all sorts were slim as well. As you see, we've got, going up into Queen Square. Yeah, fair enough. Gently, if we go, we've got lovely time, and thankfully the wet and the slight slush that we had down here has living up to the forecast, and it is brighter this afternoon. So it's always nice to see the water coming up from the ground in Bath rather than coming down from the heavens. And you're going to see it coming up a little bit later on. Of course, Bath has been around for a long time, the baths here. The Romans, when they first came to this country, came over to this side pretty quickly. Almost certainly it was the lead with a little bit of silver that they probably knew about, because they mined the lead on the Mendip Hills just to the south of us, and took it back to Italy. Indeed, some of it was used in the town of Pompeii, and as Pompeii was destroyed in the year 76, then they had got their export business from here going pretty quickly. On the left-hand side, as we go through the lights, is the old Green Park station. The railway line from Birmingham. I didn't get a chance to ask where you came from today, but if you come from the Midlands, then as children you might have come down to the Green Park station in order to go on down to the south coast. And it was the Somerset and Dorset Railway, or the old S&D. But there are quite a lot of hills between here and Dorset, and so you often had to have a double header, 2 engines, and that produced quite a lot of steam, and so the S&D was nicknamed the Slow and Dirty. The old days of steam coming out of the engines going by. I saw somebody having a bonfire as I came into town this morning, and I thought, well, that's an extremely rare sight to see bonfires around these days. Well, one of the beauties of Bath, of course, is the stone. It all occurs in the hills around us, and although many villages tend to be built of local stone, nothing quite on the scale of Bath is all of the local stone. Modern buildings on the right-hand side, very much older buildings on the left-hand side. And the big building spree started in the 1700s, and a man called John Wood, although just to confuse you, he had a son also called John Wood, and they were both architects. But John Wood the elder, as we refer to him, he started building on this side of the of Bath, and Queen Square is what we see here now. If we go all the way around, Richard, and then go out here.
They go left.
At the end, yeah. At the top of the square, immediately in front of us, and shortly beyond your left, is what is locally known as John Wood's Palace. A grand Palladian-style house, 7 houses, all with the common front, lovely triangular pediment up on the top, and these double pilasters, technically rather than columns, going around them, and the rusticated stone at the bottom for cutting in. And it is really rather special. It's the first place for ordinary people to come and stay. Look up to the left, you might just see the lady and the most photographed man in Bath, the man outside the Jane Austen Centre, just up there. Will we be passing the Jane Austen Centre? No, we won't. We'll be just missing it. We're just looking up and down the road. So this is Queen Square, although John Wood was always disappointed with it because he didn't have the money to level the square. He felt that detracted from it. The Francis Hotel on the left-hand side is a rebuild. During the war, that was bombed. We had two nights of bombing here in Bath in April 1942. The Allies were looking for a victory, and they chose to bomb 2 not very important German towns, Lübeck and Rostock. And the story goes that in the retaliation, the Germans looked in the guidebook for England and chose the 5 most beautiful towns: Exeter, Bath, York, Norwich and Canterbury. And they bombed them for 2 nights each. And the guidebook was called the Baedeker Guidebook, and so they tend to be known as the Baedeker raids. Technically, we were a legitimate target. It was the first air raid we had technically had, where any action happened. Bristol, of course, just down the road, across the Severn to Cardiff, or turn north and go up to Coventry. Look on the left-hand side, and you'll see a black building coming into view here now. When I first came to this area over 50 years ago, the whole street would have been black like that. We've had a wonderful clean-up in Bath over probably the last 35 years, and I hope they leave just 1 or 2 of the black buildings around. It sort of emphasises what a wonderful clean-up job it was. And if you just let your eyes go to the tops of the buildings, you will see there are quite a lot of chimney pots going to be around here. Georgian in style. Here's a brand new Georgian building just here on the left hand side. They filled in and completed a bit more. Georgian, of course, because it was the 4 King Georges, one after the other, who reigned for just a little bit more than 100 years, and Bath really sprang into prominence at that sort of time. A brief glimpse on the left of the great big new buildings going on over there. There was an awful battle when the designs first came out, mainly because they were about 2 floors higher than they are at the moment, and they felt that they were just going to be just dominating Bath. Quite a lot of university accommodation going in there. On the left hand side, allotments. A little bit of green around. We know that just here, almost in this allotment on the left, there is the remains of a rather fine Roman villa, which later became a factory for tesserae, the tiny little tiles which go to make up a mosaic. And we were hoping that it was going to be a millennium project to excavate it, but they did other things instead. So we turn in the gates. Our nice new, relatively new gates. They took away the old ones for the war, and they gave us these back just about 3 years ago now, I think. Got them back. Well, not them back, but got different ones back. And then up on the left hand side we've got the Royal Crescent, and if we can pull in and somewhere, I don't know where you're going to aim, in front or behind. Going to go behind?
Yeah, I'm going to sit behind here.
Going to sit behind here. Okay, go.
But the path would be closer on the other side, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah. We'll see what your reaction is. If you want to They're technically double yellow, but we're going to see how we go. What do you think?
Typical, yeah. I'll stay with the vehicle. How long are you going to be?
Well, I'll see how many people want to go. If you want to take a photograph, anybody like to go up and have a quick look at the Royal Crescent a little bit closer than the...
Yes, please.
Yep, okay. John Wood the younger, the son of the other John Wood, and there are three very special architectural features within Bath. The first was the John Wood Palace in Queen Square, the Palladian style building, the first such building for ordinary people to come and stay in. The second one was technically the Circus, which we haven't come to yet, and then the third one is the Royal Crescent. Groundbreaking design. Notice the size of the houses. They're all 5 floors. Go into that in a minute. Coming up on the right hand side, we'll see it a little bit better shortly, is our War Memorial. And just as we go through the gates, you'll see a very small plaque immediately through the gates, and that tiny little plaque is to you have to go there, is to Harry Patch. Ring a bell? Harry Patch was the last British Tommy to die from the First World War. He was 111 when he died. He was a local lad here, and he never talked about his experiences until he was 100. And after that, it was quite clear: don't fight. If you look briefly to the right, you might see the most photographed man in Bath again. Well, you've got a back view of him again, just down there. Martin, outside the Jane Austen Centre. So the standard houses in Bath have got 5 floors. Below street level you've got the basement with some of the male servants' quarters. Then you've got the reception rooms, because when you came to Bath, you came for a season very often, which was about 3 weeks or so, sometimes a little bit longer, and you used it to make your business and your social contacts. That was one of the 3 reasons for coming to Bath. Then above that you've got the smartest rooms in the house. You've got the withdrawing rooms, the rooms where people basically live during the day. Above that you've got the chief bedrooms, the family bedrooms, and right at the top you've got the children's bedrooms together with some of the female servants' quarters. There was this naive idea in Bath that if the female servants were upstairs and the male servants were downstairs, then the family were all tucked up in bed, that nothing untoward would happen. Please don't believe that. Bath was an absolute den of iniquity. There used to be a show in London called Luck Up Your Daughters. That could very well have applied to Bath.
Thank you, Mr. Ambulance. That's really very kindly.
Okay. There we go. Lovely, thank you. And another uncleaned house on the left-hand side as we come up here. The council will not clean the houses for you, but they will give you a grant if you decide that you will clean your house. And intriguingly enough, this house on the corner that we're just coming to as we turn left, number 1, the Circus, was almost the first house in Bath to be cleaned, and you can see that it's dulled down again quite a lot since then. So if we go right the way around and then 1.5 times, and we'll go out on the right. So this is the Circus, designed by John Wood the Elder. 1754 it was started. He died later that year, so his son continued with it. It is the most decorated of all the buildings we've got in Bath. The physical size of the 3 sectors are the same, so that whichever road you come in, you're looking at feature buildings, or you'd have looked straight out the other side. It's still 5 floors. Look at that frieze going all around above the front doors. There are over 500 different, and we are told that there are just, I think it's 4 pairs of them, but I've no idea where they are. The classical orders of the columns going up the building, the Doric on the ground floor, the Ionic, and then the Corinthian at the top, and the little cherubs' heads at the top. The parapet used to be continuous, but the people who had a little window up at the top complained that they looked straight out onto a parapet, and therefore the holes were cut at a slightly later time. And the acorns at the top, not pineapples, but acorns, and of course right at the top you've got the chimneys. And if you come down to the opening of our music festival in beginning of May, at the very start they put a lighted candle in each of the windows. It's not quite 100%, but it's very, very close to 100%. If you can just pull in gently by those 2 cars there where there's plenty of space for things to get past, we can look over to the right hand side, and here are the assembly rooms. This was designed by John Wood the Younger in 1771, and at the time was the most expensive public building to have been built in this country. On this end to it is the ballroom, then you've got a tea room, and finally you've got a card room. I've mentioned making your business contacts. Obviously coming to take the waters was important, but playing the cards, gambling, that was the thing that suddenly changed Bath from being a sleepy little town in the late 1600s up to being a place that everybody wanted to come to in the early 1700s. Balls took place here. The Master of Ceremonies invited the most important couple to dance at the beginning. Prince, Princess. At the end of the first dance, the gentleman sat down and joined the ladies, and a new gentleman joined the lady, and then you sort of alternated through. That went on for 2 hours. Then you had refreshments, and then you came back for country dancing. And if you've seen any of the Jane Austen films, then it's the country dancing that tends to be going on here, rather than the minuets at the beginning. Whether it's from the refreshments, which were fairly rough, that you get the name bun fight from, well, I'm not quite sure, but it was a fairly lively affair.
I think he might want us to go. There's another coach alongside.
All the dark houses seem to be on the left-hand side, don't they? Because they're on the left-hand side again, looking up that street, see what they're like, the uncleaned ones. And if anyone's got any Australian connections, just on the left, number 19, where you've got the extra bit of throw there, that was the last home of a man who was called Admiral Phillip, who as a young lieutenant was in charge of one of the ships of what was known as the First Fleet that went out to Australia with a load of convicts, and he founded a settlement there which he named after the member of the Foreign Office who had basically instructed them to go out there, and that man's name was Lord Sydney, and so the city of Sydney was founded. And Admiral Phillip came back here. He's not buried. He's buried just in one of the villages just outside Bath, a place called Bath Easton. He's not actually buried here in Bath. And notice the wide pavement on the left hand side here, lifted up so that you were out of the way of the mud of the roads, so you could walk. Again, another opportunity for you to be showing your clothes off, to be walking around, to be meeting people. Meeting people was very, very important. We'll be going left at the lights, but you probably need to give yourself a little bit of room to get around here, Richard. So we're looking down into the city centre at the moment. Those who can look over the tops of the folks in front of them on the slope. The hill behind us is Lansdowne Hill, and Lansdowne Hill, well, is basically regarded as the start of the Cotswolds. If you want to walk the Cotswolds way, it's just over 100 miles, and it starts from the door of Bath Abbey, which I'm looking straight at, not the one with the church with the spire. That's St Michael's Church, which is just outside the city walls, the old city walls, whereas the Abbey is at the centre. And you can see the hill beyond, Beech and Cliff, as it's known at that particular point over there. You'll see a hotel on the bottom of the right as we're turning to the left. There's a hotel on the right, and that was where the young Princess Victoria stayed when she came in 1830 and opened the Royal Victoria Park. Royal Victoria Park was very close to the Royal Crescent, and it was only the second free public park in the country. I must admit the Victorians were extremely good about creating green spaces within their towns, and if I can get on a political hobby horse for a little, it saddens me that so many green spaces in towns are being covered up and built upon these days. Her visit to Bath was not a happy one. Two stories, either that somebody complained about the dowdiness of her dress or on the size of her ankles, but in either way the young princess was not amused, and she swore never to come to Bath again. And later in life, when she was an old lady, she was going through to Bristol on the train, and all the crowds on the station waiting to see her, she ordered that the blinds of her carriage be drawn in order that she may not look on Bath and Bath may not look on her. On the right, if you look down just past that last door, you'll see the foundations of these buildings are really quite enormous. There's a very steep staircase going down sort of through the foundations. This was one of the areas of Bath where it was hit quite badly in the Blitz, but by rebuilding in stone, you nowadays have to look extremely carefully in order to find which is a rebuild as opposed to which is an original building there. And one of the greatest lady actresses that there was around at the beginning of the tail end of the 18th, 19th century, Sarah Siddons, lived in a house just over there on the right, number 33, Siddons House. Jane Austen is a great feature here in Bath. She didn't particularly like Bath, but by golly do we like her nowadays. Her parents were married in this church, and her father is buried there, but his gravestone is taken out and is one of those stones in the churchyard there. She found Bath a slightly oppressive place to be. She didn't like the smoke that was in the city, and talked about walking up onto the hills in order to get out of the smoke of Bath. And when she left Bath, she went to Clifton in Bristol and wrote to her sister and said, "With what relief we have left Bath for the purer air of Clifton." Intriguingly, she didn't write anything while she was here in Bath, but she did later write two books about Bath in particular. Persuasion and Northanger Abbey were both based here in Bath. And one of our researchers, local researchers, have decided that the reason she didn't write here in Bath was that she didn't have a piano when she was here. Because after leaving Bath and going to Clifton and then later going down to Hampshire, her practice was that she would sit at the piano and play during the morning and then write during the afternoon, as if the playing of the piano inspired her to do her creative writing. So crossing the Avon again, Of course, there are many Avons in this country. The Romans, when they came, asked the locals, what do you call it? Oh, that's the Avon. It was only later that they discovered that Avon was quite simply the old Celtic word for river. So we shouldn't really call it the River Avon, we should simply call it the Avon. And if you go not that far away into Wales, then the word is virtually still the same. To me, a mere Englishman, it's the River Conway. To a Welshman, it's the Afon Conway. Another nice new Georgian block having been built on the right hand side. Nice Bath stone. I would suspect that it's probably genuine Bath stone. We've only got one Bath stone quarry left within the city boundaries at the moment. We have to go a little bit further afield, but not very far afield. There's certainly plenty of it. But a little while ago we were getting a Jurassic limestone virtually identical to Bath stone coming in from India. It wasn't selling very well as Indian limestone, and so they called it Indian Bath limestone. I think that's the right way around. Indian Bath limestone, and it sells very well and seems to work.
Poppy Bridge roundabout and come back out again.
Yes.
I think we wouldn't need it.
No. Sydney Gardens, again named after Lord Sydney, and on the right hand side, number 4, is the home that Jane Austen lived in longest. Well, her parents retired to Bath. That's where they came in to number 4 at that point. Oh, decided not to. The Holborn Museum used to be a hotel, and they've got a very modern extension on the back, which people feel works really extremely well. Ooh, right.
Oh, that one. Sorry. Of course it is, yeah. It wasn't mixed up with the next one.
Okay. Right, a bit of excitement at the front. Now, I don't know if any of you saw the film Vanity Fair, but virtually all the outside scenes of Vanity Fair were filmed here in Bath, and this is London in Vanity Fair. This is Great Pulteney Street, wide and long and straight, and as you can see, completely different to any other street in Bath. We're on the Pulteney estate. Great big plans for this to be built up on either side, but we're at the tail end of the 1900s. We are at war with France, and the royal family start going down to Brighton, and so the money drained away, and so nothing got built on the sides to this. And so really rather a lovely street. All the little streets nearby are named on family connections with the Pulteney family. So Laura Place, was Fountain, was either a daughter or a granddaughter or a niece, and so on. So we gently turn around and go back down again, Richard. On the left hand side you might be able to make number 15 picked out on the side of the building there. That is the Bath home of William Pitt the Younger, our youngest ever Prime Minister. It still amazes me he was only 25 when he became Prime Minister of England, and he had already been Chancellor of the Exchequer for a couple of years. He's also our longest serving Prime Minister, twice as long as Margaret Thatcher. But not in one continuous If you look to the right hand side, you'll see a hotel with a sedan chair outside. This was the original taxi around Bath. 2 strong men, 2 poles went through it, and a man at the front, a man at the back picked you up and carried you around town. That was one of the scandals. If it started to rain, they would open the top unless you paid more money to close it again. And there were a lot of complaints about it, and so they appealed to the Master of Ceremonies of the time, a man called Richard Nash, or better known as Beau Nash, and his solution was to put a number on each of the sedan chairs, and best to go out that one, on each of the sedan chairs, so that they could be identified, and that was the start of putting numbers on taxis. A nice hexagonal pillar box, old Victorian pillar box on the corner on the left as we turn round here, before they became round. They became round in order that the letters weren't trapped in the corners and therefore delayed unnecessarily. Although we still have square ones, don't we, inset into walls. Nice view of playing fields and the Abbey on the right hand side. We'll be getting more views of the Abbey as we go right here. We've got around a bit quicker than sometimes, but not to worry. The church in front has special connections with the Twin Towers in New York, because one of the relatively few English people were killed in that disaster, but one of them was the daughter of the rector of that church there. So on the right, yeah, we're going right. On the right-hand side, you see the Abbey, and to the right of it, you see the Empire Hotel. Very unusual skyline. You'll get another glance to have a look at that skyline a little bit later on. It represents all three classes of English society. You've got the castle at one end, a rather fine Dutch middle class for the gable, and a country cottage on the other end. Representing, as I say, all three classes of English society, who were welcome to stay there, brackets, provided they could pay the bill. In 1939, the Admiralty took it over for the duration of the war, and in fact the draft work on the miniature submarine, the sort of 1- and 2-man submarine, took place there. They gave it back in 1989, so their war seemed to last rather longer than everybody else's, and it's now turned into eating places on the ground floor and apartments above. But all the original fittings from the late 1800s were stored in the basement when they came to take the building back. So St John's Church on the left-hand side, the Abbey sort of half right, and St Michael's Church, which we briefly saw just coming into view. If you think of St John's and St Michael's, that's almost the extent of the old medieval city. About 3,500 people there, and then during the 1700s expanded up Lansdowne direction up to about 35,000. And now we're about 85,000 and crossing the river again, and there's the Pulteney Bridge. We're not allowed to take coaches over there now, so we went down. That's the bottom end of Great Pulteney Street. And if you want a little walk at the end, go over go over the bridge, turn right at the end of the bridge, and just walk down the side of the river. We'll be turning right, and come up at this bridge. It's a nice little walk around that part. And there on the right-hand side, that is the original level of the settlement of Bath. And we are very much subject to flooding. Down where the station is, as we go through these lights, look to the left and you'll see that the station is about 150 yards down there on the left-hand side, so not very far away from the Abbey. We'll be dropping you at the Abbey, but we're going to do a loop around before we get there. No, we'll go round. No, we'll go that way round and then drop off. But on the right is the original level of the city of Bath. And so John Wool, when he built these houses on the left-hand side, built them with a double cellar, one cellar on top of another cellar, in order to lift them up out of the floodplain. A very famous little restaurant just down there on the left-hand side, Sally Lunn. Sally Lunn was a French Huguenot refugee who either was a baker, became associated with a baker, and baked this large bun. If you know what a Big Mac looks like, it's small in comparison with a Sally Lunn. And it was named a Sally Lunn because it was light on the bottom and dark on the top. And so it was a sun and moon, or in French, a sol et lune. And if you sell enough sol et lunes, you're going to become called Sally Lunn. So, our Abbey here on the left-hand side. This is the third Abbey on this site. I'll be walking you back past that, so we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. And then on the right-hand side, we've got our Guild Hall, not built by the Woods, but by Baldwin. The centre part 1776. It's sad how many American students don't recognise 1776. The wings are Victorian, but again they blended in with the weathering of the stone. So, the Abbey in the centre of the old city. Here at the traffic lights, this is North Gate. That's the end of the old city. Really quite a small place, and expanded way, way, way ahead in the 1700s. We'll be turning right here, but very gently so that people can look back up on the left, look back up Great Pulteney Street. The only bridge with shops on both sides throughout the country. And if you just walk across the bridge and turn right at the end, it drops you down beside the river there. It's really rather nice. Just a pleasant little walk around at the end of the day. Bath are not playing at home today. They're in France at Toulouse. So it's relatively quiet here on a Saturday afternoon. Today. A lot of the land up there on the left-hand side came up for sale some years ago, and the National Trust were persuaded to step in and to buy it, and we're very thankful that they did, because it saved development up on those hills. So we just go down there. Now we're coming to the Roman Baths. We've got to walk you to the Roman Baths. This is where we will be leaving the coach. Thank you, Richard, for taking us around. As you get off the coach, I have got your ticket, which is a small token for the Roman Baths, and you cling on to it for all of 5 minutes and give it back when we get back into the Roman Baths. Are you pushing you in there? So please make sure that you take all your bits and pieces off the coach with you at this moment of time. You won't be coming back on the coach, but just take a look.